everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name's Lauren, and I'll be your host. I'd like to welcome our panelists for tonight, Christian, Maya, Ashley Mack, and Mia Mason. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that if you have any questions for the panelists, please feel free to post them in the chat. We'll address them as they come in. So before we get into introductions, I'd like to start off with a focusing activity to get everybody's mind in the right place for tonight's discussion. So you can go ahead and answer this question in the chat or in the comments. So go ahead and name one struggle that people in the LGBTQ community face. We also want to remind you to keep all of the questions pertinent to LGBTQ advocacy, LGBTQ rights, etc. So while those answers are coming in, I'd like to introduce our guests. First, I'll start off with Christian Thomas. He's a current junior at Eastern Tech High School, concentrating in the Academy of Health Professions. He's the vice chair and proud founder of Eastern Tech's Democrats Club, serves as the president of his class, and is the Special Events Committee Secretary for the Greater Chesapeake and National Capital Region American Red Cross Youth Advisory Board. As a part of the LGBT community, he is also excited to participate in tonight's event. Up next, we have Maya Dubervik. Maya is a sophomore at Eastern Tech High School, where she's a student in the Law and Public Policy program. She's involved in the Student Council and on the county and state level, serving as Chief of Staff for Baltimore County Student Councils and as a Legislative Affairs Coordinator for Maryland Association of Student Councils. She's a proud founder and chair of Eastern Tech's Democratic Club. She has served on the Maryland Association of High School Democrats Executive Board as well. And finally, we also have Ashley Mack, who's an LGBTQ advocate in the military space, who co-founded 2 organizations that assist queer military families. She's also a very strong vocal advocate for LGBTQ rights. And also tonight we have Mia Mason, who's running as the Congressional Democratic nominee for District 1 in Maryland. She's a 20-year veteran who served in the Army, Navy, and DC National Guard. She retired in 2018 and shifted her focus to advocacy and fighting to restore equity and equality back into our communities. So those are all of our panelists for tonight who are going to be joining us for our discussion. So while our answers are coming in, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to our guests to answer the question of what is one struggle that people in the LGBTQ community face. Mia, you want to go ahead and kick it off for us?
Sure. I think one of the hardest things that we actually face is employment discrimination. You know, getting hired is one of the hardest things to deal with, and getting judged based on the way you look, the way you sound, the way you present yourself can all be forms of discrimination. And we need to be able to make sure that getting hired is based on the character of the person and the skill sets and the quality of that person being capable of working in the environment. That's one of the hardest things we all face in the LGBT community.
Absolutely. Ashley, did you want to chime in?
Sure, definitely. I think that having affirming healthcare providers is extremely important. No matter what you identify under the queer umbrella, we definitely need some competency training out there for medical providers and medical staff and so forth. And I really would love to see that addressed, throughout our country.
Absolutely, and I know we're going to get into that later tonight. Christian, how about you? What's one struggle that people in the LGBTQ community face?
Yeah, so as a member of the American Red Cross, as a youth leader for the American Red Cross, it saddens me deeply to know that there's a lot of stigmatization still with AIDS and HIV that is preventing gay men who have sex with other gay men from actually being able to donate blood in blood drives. And that's something that recently there was a bill passed that lessened the period of abstinence from 6 months to 3 months. But during our COVID-19 pandemic, we need blood as a nation. We need to have blood drives, and there's a huge portion of our society that's unable to donate blood because of their sexual identity.
Absolutely, that's a good topic to bring up. Maya, how about you?
Definitely a focus around LGBT youth and how there are higher rates of suicide, depression among LGBT youth, making sure they have those safe spaces in schools with accepting teachers, things like that, especially where there is still a lot of stigma in less progressive spaces.
Absolutely. We also have some answers coming in from the viewers, such as discrimination in healthcare. That's absolutely correct, and we're going to get into that tonight. So let's actually jump right on into our questions for tonight. We're going to go ahead and address other struggles that people currently face, such as healthcare disparities. So I guess, Ashley, did you want to touch a little bit more on healthcare disparities?
Yeah, absolutely. As someone who was a military dependent and now a spouse of a retired military service member, I can tell you firsthand, after Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and we were able to be recognized as a married couple. When it came to healthcare, it was extremely, I mean, don't get me wrong, we were thankful for having that benefit, but it was extremely frustrating because the way we were talked to, and things were referenced, and simple things like, well, are you sure you're not pregnant? When you're in a same sex, for me, for two female, relationship or so forth. I feel like I have felt uncomfortable before where the doctor wouldn't address issues that might have to do with, intimacy problems and whatnot. We've also had, in one case in North Carolina, where a doctor just flat out refused to see our son, who was about 18 months at the time, because he didn't believe in our lifestyle, and he didn't want to accept us as a family. He would recognize Heather, my spouse, as the birth mother, but for me, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be the case. So, yes, there's been some improvements, but I think that, there needs to, again, we have a widespread, issue, especially with our, trans youth and transgender Americans, and, the discrimination that they too face, which to me, in my opinion, is much more than what I've had to go through. So, I hope to see things in place at a federal, state, and local levels, so that we can, make sure that people feel comfortable excuse me, when they go to their doctors.
I agree. And I think that Mia can touch a little bit more about kind of how can we address and improve upon access to LGBTQ healthcare.
Well, it starts with the form that you fill out. I remember a long time ago in 1998, it was just your name, birth name, gender, and that's it. Now they're asking sexual orientation, they're asking this, they're asking what was your birth gender, what is your preferred this, preferred that. This actually provides a lot of identifying information that some of the LGBT community are comfortable with, unless they're actually disclosing it to an actual person. Because like normal, they get to that checkout and desk, and it's like they get stared at, they get looked at, they get told differently, or they're not seen by the doctor. They get some other type of nurse that comes in from another department or gets flown in or drove in to get seen, because you're now in this little category of what fits in their box. So that reminds me of the time that I was active duty. I was transitioning while active duty, and I called Military One Source, and I was like, look, how can I get help? I have this gender identity issue. I'm trying to resolve it. It's been, here for a very long time, since I was a kid. What can I do? And they're like, well, you were prior Navy. Why don't you try using your VA benefits? Because I tried for like 4 to 6 months to go through the active duty military, and it was just straight no, 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 no. And to then out myself during Don't Ask, Don't Tell was almost going to be a huge mistake. And then when Don't Ask, Don't Tell fell, question 26 still didn't include me. So I still had to keep what I was doing to myself, for myself and my family, quiet, because the military was going to take that away from us. So to talk like what Ashley wants, to have that equality to every healthcare provider, it starts at the top. You know, it starts with the ERA. It starts with making sure that our HIPAA is protected. You know, making sure that all of anybody who puts on scrubs or shows up to work as a janitor is fully trained in diversity, so that we don't have to face any type of discrimination in our LGBTQIA plus community ever again. You know, it would be nice to actually see a doctor who isn't going to be there like, dude, what do you want? What do you want this? Just, hey, look, here I am. You got my medical record. It's all been digitized for you. You know who I am. Thank you. Let's proceed in getting me fixed. Or, you know, I'm here for a broken arm or a burn. You just don't rush me in like a number and then bill me and then send me on my way without even getting a follow-up appointment or a phone number. Those are some of the biggest issues that I face here in DC and in Maryland, that, you know, I got the same treatment that I had in Kentucky and Tennessee, and I was like flabbergasted. And we got a lot of things changed. We like worked with organizations to get the X on the driver's license. Those were really big things to lobby for. We need to continue to get our local and state governments to lobby for this as well. So, Christian, Maya, anything you want to add on to this? Probably forgot something. Add on to this for me.
I would definitely say that when it comes to healthcare, like insurances and that kind of stuff, there are a lot of disparities when it comes to the transgender community relying on hormonal treatment and surgeries. And I feel like that's something we should address as well when we're considering like the healthcare, like starting from the top. How do we ensure that insurance companies are relying or are supporting transgender people in their transitioning? How do we ensure that there are platforms in place to, you know, protect their right to gender transitioning?
Well, since you gave me a question, I think one of the best things that we can do is make sure that we build upon the ACA and make sure that there are no exclusions. Okay? Make sure that Medicare for All includes this. You know, for 10 years, they've been trying to get rid of it. They've always promised this new healthcare plan. But when you go to your healthcare insurance provider and they give you the long form of what's excluded, you're going to find out that you're not included. If you have multiple surgeries in your back, or you have MS, or this or that, or some type of, it can be a lot of things. They can even deny you for just showing up to the ER because you might have gone too many times. So this needs to get fixed. The a la carte service of healthcare is going to end when we bring Medicare for All and bring competition in with the low drug prices and everything else, along with low copays, and making sure that it includes your vision and dinner. This will blow all of the other insurance companies out of the market because more people will sign up with us to get themselves treated, to have that dignity and respect, the equity and equality, that everybody is treated the same. You know, some of the hospital beds like 30 years ago would only be like $6 a night. Now they're $600 a night. So things need to change, and we need to be able to provide that competition so that everything is affordable for everyone. How about you, Maya? Anything to add?
No, I love what you said about healthcare, Medicare for All, allowing that to just be completely equal, open access. Because definitely starting from the top with the national government is where we need to go, and that's like with the Equal Rights Amendment and everything like that. I just, especially considering transgender youth, and not to bring up the youth, but I am one, so I kind of feel like we have to speak for them. It's kind of, we have to acknowledge that they rely on their parents, and we need to give them enough support network, make sure their doctors are also educated, pediatricians are educated on what to do for transgender youth, and provide them with the right services, so that their issues aren't overlooked, obviously, and they're left not comfortable in their gender identity. And there was a question in the chat.
Yes, we did have a question pop up in the chat from Midavani. What measures can be taken to end discrimination in the workplace and access to jobs?
Well, I'll kick this off. You know, listening to President Obama so reassured about making sure that we could actually fix all of the agencies and departments that have been deregulated, especially, you know, the Department of Labor, you know, and the EO office. You know, there can be different names of it depending on what type of branch of service you are in. or if you're just a civilian contractor, or you're a civilian who has to bring a federal lawsuit against your employer. So we have to be able to make sure that we're legally prepared, and we've been fighting for 4 to 20, 30 years. Civil rights revolution has not stopped. We are still fighting for that equity and equality, and we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that workplace discrimination ends. I remember going to work, and then day before Mother's Day, hey, we need you to manage your time, getting Bruce Jennered, and then of course, why don't you be the maid, clean up the shop, manage your time? Well, guess what? I wasn't going to go through the same lawsuit again, so I basically put in my 2 weeks notice and moved on. I said, look, we need to be able to fix this national issue from the top.
Yeah. Oh, and then I think with the recent Supreme Court case being passed, like, we need to make sure that we are actually enforcing the policy that has been sanctioned by the Supreme Court case. We need to ensure that there is going to be a limit, that there discrimination in the workplace based on the LGBTQ community, it needs to be subdued and it needs to stop. And I feel like by starting with the top, we're able to do that. So thank you, Mia Mason.
Anyone else?
Ashley, I have a question for you. How do you think on a federal level we can address it for the military?
Well,
and job discrimination.
Yeah, I know that, there is, for instance, for discrimination in the military, there is an EO policy in place, that somewhat protects everyone but transgender service members. And I have, as a military family member and someone who works closely with the military, I have seen some improvement since Don't Ask, Don't Tell. However, in the last 4 years, a lot of the improvement that had been made started to decline again. Starting with the transgender tweet, and other things that have happened, in the news and whatnot. I think that if we can get, we can turn things around, and under a new administration, I believe day one that at the federal level, it's diversity is going to be embraced. It's going to be affirmed. And I think that with such a broad approach to what we've heard from various senators and Congress, folks running for Congress, and of course Joe Biden and Senator Harris, I think that and I hope that it will trickle down to not just the federal level, but to the state, the local level, to the private sector, because we saw a lot of that after Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Because you look back, the military, they've led the way, for our country, whether it was, integrating women, whether it was, integrating African Americans and ending segregation and so forth. So I really, I'm positive that is only going to, bring much needed, positive change to our community. And for that, I think, that the jobs are going to be out there. We do see more and more companies, affirming our community. And, with that, I think that that's going to lead to, better health care through your employer. And I mean, I think it's a win-win situation, but, we have 13 days. It's just so crucial that, we've got to be the change, and we've got to, do our part to make it happen.
Right. Absolutely. And with that being said, if you live in Maryland, early voting starts October 26th, and the polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and it ends on November 2nd. So make sure that you get out and vote if you haven't voted already. I kind of wanted to pose a question to our youth of the panelists. In what ways are LGBT youth disproportionately discriminated against? And in which ways?
I think LGBTQ youth are really discriminated against, especially for transgender youth in school settings. I mean, I was doing a bunch of research for a project on the transgender community in one of my classes a few weeks ago, and there was a recent case study for a student who was refused to attend the bathroom that they identify with. And it's like, how do we, as a state and on the federal level, how can we ensure that students are comfortable going into the bathroom that they identify with? How can we ensure that students aren't required to travel all the way across the building to go to the nurse's office in order to use the bathroom in a school setting? There needs to be some sort of guidelines set into place. There needs to be some sort of law that's preventing this discrimination, or preventing this discrimination. Also in the athletic system, in a lot of school athletics, there's so much stigmatization of people like in the LGBT community participating in sports that are normally feminized or masculinized. And so I think that also for transgender youth wanting to participate in a team that identifies with their gender, we need to ensure that they're able to do that. We need to ensure that it's okay for a transgender man to participate in the boys football team and not have to continue to play on the girls football team. And I think that as youth, and advocates, as a student leader in my community, I try to ensure that there are a lot of resources. But I feel like if there are resources coming from the federal level that are really supporting this, then that could really make a big difference in the lives of LGBTQ youth.
And it's funny that you said about the bathrooms. I'm in nursing school, and we are actually taught that as if you're going to be a school nurse, that your bathroom is pretty much the safe haven for transgender youth. And you're taught that, transgender youth view bathrooms as, an unsafe space. And it's just sad that that's obviously, at least I'm getting some kind of education for healthcare for LGBT youth. But it's still sad to hear that. Mia, what kind of policies can we work on to help the LGBT youth in these situations?
Well, I'm going to let Maya speak first, and then I'll answer, okay?
Thank you, Mia. Yeah, sorry, I was about to unmute and then you spoke, Lauren. It's all good though.
I'll just stay unmuted, okay?
Yeah, no problem. I didn't want there to be any feedback. But yeah, definitely everything that Christian mentioned for sure, especially students that are non-binary and don't fit within the gendered spectrum, obviously. There are definitely things that we can do just in a school-wide setting, like asking for your preferred pronouns on the first day of class. I know some of our teachers are trying to implement things like that into the classroom setting, and same with the clubs. Like me and Christian co-founded our Democrats Club at our school, and we made sure to ask everyone for preferred pronouns so that we would be identifying them correctly, things like that, just to make things a little bit more inclusive. And I know Christian kind of talked nationally with laws and things like that. I was just thinking school-wide what we can do to kind of be more inclusive just on a daily basis. Yeah, and go ahead, Mia.
So I have to give credit to a wonderful movie that gives some inspiration to everyone. It's called Hidden Figures. If you haven't watched it, it basically talks about the racial divide in our country, the segregation, and what these women had to do to become equal. And one of the things that is a highlight in that is the bathroom. There were colored bathrooms just about 50, 60 years ago in Virginia and in other states as well. Now, we have our wonderful LGBT youth, and we're facing the same issues. We're being segregated by sex. It needs to stop. I remember during my deployment in Afghanistan, my first sergeant was trying to build and get the CBs and all of this and spend money to have separate living quarters, have separate bathrooms and all this other stuff. And it was just like, first sergeant, hey, whoa, just get rid of the sign. And he said, okay, then you make the sign. And I was like, okay, too easy. So even for the Afghan interpreters, I had to translate all of that and get it fixed because they didn't know what to do. We had, 2 toilets and a shower and then 4 outhouses. And it didn't matter. We were all there living together, fighting for our country in a foreign country. And we were training the females and everybody else how to fight. So we can survive without being classified by gender. We were all there doing our skills and jobs, getting the mission done. And if we have to go to the moon again, we need to make sure that we have that equity and equality completed before we even try to touch base on that.
Absolutely, Mia. I did want to kind of touch also on a smaller sector within the LGBT community, which is other minority groups within the community, such as people of color. How are they disproportionately affected with discrimination? This question goes out to anybody, any of our panelists.
Well, I'll kick it off. You know, one of the things is that we're often born and raised in different zip codes. We're segregated, you know, and we have different life experiences and what we're able to do, you know, and we see what type of hate and violence comes out of people when we're judged, you know. And I want to talk about the Black trans lives that are out there that are, you know, every year those numbers have gone up, and under this presidency we've seen a surge, you know, of violence against, you know, women of color, especially even men of color who are in the LGBT community, because, you know, they get called names, they get dead named, they get harassed, they get groped, they get sexually assaulted, they get mistreated, and even the police don't even believe because they often judge them. So we have a lot to work with, a lot to do to get this right, and it starts with everyone filling out their ballot this November, because everything that we've been fighting for the last 5,200 plus years on the line. That's how we're going to be able to help our people of color in the LGBTQ plus community, so that we can all have the equity and equality that is promised to us by the Constitution.
You're right, Mia. It looks like we have some comments from the viewers. The LGBT youth don't only face discrimination from the outside world, but also at home, often being rejected by their families and cast into the street. What can we do to protect these youth? I think that's very important, and there is a rising number of homelessness in District 1 even, Mia. I guess let's think of some solutions to kind of protect these youth that are being abandoned by their families.
Well, we have wonderful organizations. I know Ashley founded two, but, you know, there's Planned Parenthood, there's other resources out there that will accept those of the LGBT and find them shelter, find them, get them back into school, you know, especially during this pandemic. You know, even I was homeless 2 years ago, and I was homeless for 1.5 years, and nobody noticed, but I got help. Friends came and helped me, and you know, it's about building our community and helping others and giving back. So those organizations are the resources that we need to be able to make sure that we care. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, you know, one thing that under this administration that it's so infuriating is basically federal policy and federal money is being used to discriminate the LGBT community. And our youth is the most vulnerable, you know, and they should be able to go somewhere, to a various shelter or you know, whatever set up in their community, you know, whether it's their LGBTQ center or whatnot, and get, you know, the resources and the help that they need. But even, you know, other types of organizations, even maybe even religious organizations and so forth, but yet they're getting federal money to operate, yet they're able to turn around and basically shut the door in the faces of, you know, these vulnerable Americans. And that, to me, absolutely positively needs to stop. No federal dollars should go to any type of organization, especially when it comes to our children. You know, we need a national campaign of sort, and I know it within our community. You know, we know about it, but America needs to know the suicide rate among our LGBTQ youth. I mean, if, you know, I don't have numbers right in front of me, but we can get them, you know, 5 minutes into a Google search. But I mean, compared to youth that, you know, aren't under that is not under the queer, you know, queer umbrella, but you know, we need to let people know that this is basically a crisis. And, you know, and there was a downward, you know, an upward tick after the last election. I mean, kids were scared, you know, because for so long, you know, under the Obama administration, people were coming out. They were feeling safe. They were feeling, you know, that they could be their true, authentic self. But then this was, you know, this, you know, Trump was elected, and we start to hear anti-gay, anti-trans, anti-queer rhetoric, and it's been extremely harmful for our youth. But I think it goes back to educating of people of here's a problem, and we need to work together, and we need the school districts have to step up. Even in some of the most progressive counties and districts in cities in this country, they have got to step up. They have got to do a better job for our queer kids, because it is appalling, especially our trans kids. They've got to be protected, because a lot of these kids, like the person, I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses on, but the person mentioned is they don't have a safe place at home. So sometimes school, or that is the only place that they do have. And now in a pandemic, a lot of these kids aren't in school. So yeah, we've got to do a better job with our kids. And I will say that another plug for Joe Biden. I actually had I was able to work with the Biden Foundation personally. And I can tell you, they're authentic when it comes to the youth, and they're authentic when it comes to the LGBTQ youth. I've been in the room, with their folks, and, they want to hear from us, and they want to act on us. So again, 13 days, we've got to make this happen, because if not, I honestly fear what will happen to our queer youth. As someone who has a trans nibbling myself, I really fear for their future.
I completely agree with you. And, there's even discrimination within our community, from what Molly B says on our stream. And I have to be able to say, it needs to be addressed. I remember back when I was kicked out of the military, and I spent like the first 6 months of 2015 trying to figure out what to do, what to get help with. It wasn't until June until I found your organization that really helped me out, helped me get honed in on exactly what I should be doing for the next year and a half. And within the next year, I was back in the military. I was accepted before the policy was even inked. I was like, wow, this really works. Thank you for that. But when we see this discrimination between the L, G, the B, the T, the Q, the I, and the A, and the plus, it has to stop. We were so divided from 2015 to 2017 because of this. We need to become united. I understand a lot of nonprofit organizations have specialties and niche, but sometimes we're just coming to you to simply hear a yes. Can you help me? Instead of being turned no, you make too much money. Oh, you have to have age. You have to be this. You have to be a trans man. You have to be whatever. It was difficult. But until I found a military organization that was able to help me and understand exactly what I was going through, I'm so grateful. Because for the next year after that, I lost my job, my car, my home, everything, until I actually got back in. And then it took another year and a half just to recover from that, to actually be where I am today, 2 years after the fact. So all of that hard work, the friendships, the making sure that my military career was secured, wasn't lost. We became the advocate for everyone in our community, and I'm so thankful to be here with y'all to see what else we can do together.
If you don't mind, I want to give the others time to speak, but you touched on some things that it's very important. There is a lot of discrimination within our community, and I can tell you, as someone who is an advocate on the national level, and was very, very high speed at the time, we knew that when marriage equality passed, that the next focus had to be fighting for transgender service members and their families, and transgender Americans, because as a military community, you're fighting for your country. You're fighting to defend your Constitution. You're upholding those values. And I work very closely with one of our other co-founders, Stephen Peters, and we had the conversation. We're like, we have to focus on helping our transgender service members, because they were there. They were with us after Don't Ask, Don't Tell. They were there pushing for DOMA to be overturned. They were there for marriage equality. So to me, we had to be there for them. And do you know, when we started, I received a lot of negative flack back from gays and lesbians in our organization, and even in the community. It's like, why so much focus? Well, why do you want me to be a donor if you're not helping me? And I just still, to this day, I don't understand that mindset. That's just not who we are. And granted, it was only a small percentage, but I still see it today. I still see it. Discrimination, not just with transgender service, with our transgender community, but with even how many people of color in the queer community. And that is something that absolutely needs to address. I see my privilege, I recognize my privilege, and I try and use that to have those tough conversations and call people out within our own community that, maybe they're not making obvious, discrimination, but subtle, and racism. I mean, there's racism within our community, and we have to have those tough conversations to make sure that when we say all, we mean all, and there's still a lot of work to do. I feel very strongly about this, and I have absolutely no regrets. And it's people like Mia and Mia's story, who I can tell you, after 2016's election, I just wanted to go crawl in a cave somewhere and not come out. But it was people like Mia that when I got, when that tweet came out, I knew that I had to keep working for her. And then I see our youth here on this call. These are the people that we have to keep. I want you, to be strong leaders, because you're the next generation, and you're going to be the leaders for my kids that are probably running around upstairs because I'm not up there wrangling them. So I apologize for that. But it is important. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get off on a tangent. I'll be quiet now.
We hit our soapbox there because
we
have to address it and tell our youth who has joined us tonight what has been going on behind the scenes for the last 5-10 years. So Maya, Christian, tell us, what do you see any division in the LGBT at all?
I see a complete division. I mean, right now, I saw a lot of division in the past, but right now I feel like there's a lot of unity within the LGBT community, especially in my school. We have this organization called GLISTEN that's really starting to blossom in our school. We have our Democratic organization that we created that's blossoming in our school as well. But then I talk to other students that go to different schools, because Eastern Tech is a very privileged school. It's a magnet school. I talk to other students from different schools, and there aren't as many resources. There aren't as many opportunities for them to feel welcome in the community. I mean, one of my friends was on this call earlier today, and I recognized him as a transgender man. And so it's like, he has told me things about his story, about coming out in front of our school, about the fear that he had coming out to his family, the fear he had in his group. I'm so privileged that I didn't have to have that fear, but that still exists. And it's like, as we're progressing in society, as I am comfortable as a gay person, I'm very comfortable with my family, and I'm comfortable in my school, telling everyone who wants to listen. I feel like there's still so many people who aren't as comfortable. And it's with these student organizations that, as a youth, that I can participate in. It's making sure that people see me as someone they can look up to, someone who can represent them. It's making sure that people like Maya, who are strong allies for our LGBT community, are speaking out in youth settings, are speaking out against any bullying or harassment that continues. I know that there was one person who made a very discriminatory post, or a very hurtful post about the LGBT community. And immediately that was sent to our administration at our school. We all came together as a collective group of students to ensure that we were making, do you remember that, Maya?
It wasn't when I was there, but I do remember it.
Okay, yeah. A lot of like discriminatory policies. There are a lot of things. As a group, as youth, we come together. We have platforms like social media, like Instagram and TikTok, which we always get bashed for using, that are really connecting us as youth, and we're able to continue to evolve and to want to get involved. And there are organizations like this thing called Turn Up I was an intern for, where we're trying to encourage youth to become more active in politics and become more advocates for themselves and for their communities. And that's really where it stands for. Is if we have one advocate from that we can look up to, like I remember seeing Pete Buttigieg running for president, and that really opened my eyes to like the future that I might have in the political realm. So it's like having people like you, Mia Mason, running for Maryland's first district in the House of Representatives. I really feel like empowered as a youth to see myself in the future running for possibly the House of Representatives as well. So yeah.
Thank you. It'd be awesome to see that. Go ahead, Maya.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I feel like we're always cutting each other off. I don't mean to. I'm sorry. But absolutely, everything Christian said is very true. And especially in our school, I don't see it as much any division within the LGBT community. But I do know from being in online spaces and everything like that, especially on Twitter, there are a lot of instances where especially white gays and lesbians will commit microaggressions against people of color in the LGBT community, sometimes not even aware they're doing it. But I definitely think that is something that is so clear in the LGBT community. Sometimes it needs to be changed, it needs to be recognized, because just because you are marginalized in one sense doesn't mean you get to use that to override someone else's marginalization and things like that. So I definitely think that not all experiences are the same, and activism doesn't really mean anything unless it's intersectional. So definitely.
And also, there are a lot of things around like this idea of a simp or ideas of toxic masculinity that are spreading that are really like making the LGBT community feel isolated as youth. That are making us feel like, well, this idea of toxic masculinity, like sometimes I begin to doubt myself as a man because I see all these things saying that because I display feminine properties, I'm against society's wishes and that kind of stuff. So sorry, I just wanted to put that in there.
Thank you for chiming in and contributing that. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to add before we wrap up for tonight? Anything covering, more forms of discrimination? We have covered job discrimination for the LGBT community, healthcare discrimination, discrimination against minority groups in the community. Is there anything else that you guys can think of that we should talk about tonight, that we should really address?
I'd like to address the blood discrimination that I talked about earlier. So the FDA, so like a lot of people blame the Red Cross for a lot of blood discrimination that's going on and preventing gay men from donating blood, but it actually comes from the FDA's guidelines, from the FDA releasing things saying you have to wait a 3-month period. And so I think that Mia, if you're elected into the House of Representatives, I am praying you are, that you will be able to review its guidance on reducing the risk of human immunodeficiency virus transmission by blood and blood products. That you can help to review that policy within the FDA and make sure that a lot of the policies passed for blood donations are actually in reference to the scientific background rather than simply just stigmatizations of the LGBT community and of gay men, and further perpetuating that idea that every gay man might have AIDS or every gay man is compromised by this disease. And it's like, we need to stop stigmatizing each other. We need to start viewing each other and supporting one another. And I think that starts with blood discrimination, because I mean, if people are fearing that I would donate like blood that's not okay and that would give someone else AIDS. I mean, there's so much testing that goes into every single blood product that's donated. HIV and AIDS would be detected in seconds. And so it's like, why is it that somebody who might have another type of blood-related disease, why are they not discriminated against? But because I identify with the LGBT community, therefore I am unable to donate blood. It's like there are so many other different ways, and scientific reasoning is actually against this policy that's instantiated. And it's like, why is that still prevalent in today's society? And so hopefully we can address that.
Oh, absolutely. We want to address it because those policies are still outdated from like the old DSM 3 and 4. They need to catch up to current times. Same thing if you get a tattoo and then you wanted to go donate blood to get more ink or anything else done. Simple rules like that probably aren't scientifically founded. They probably ask if you smoke weed or if you do this or do that. They're even discriminating against people who have COVID, okay, who wanted to give blood to make plasma. So these guidelines really need to get reviewed. We don't need somebody from the meatpacking industry to basically run the FDA. We need scientists to run the FDA. You know, things have to be able to be proven that it is. If not, it's an old law, like having your bird on a leash. Virginia, I know Virginia has a bird leash law. So please, you know, old laws like this need to get reviewed and, you know, see if it's up to snuff. And then, you know, scientifically disproven and said, hey, look, we need to make sure that the equity and equality is provided to everybody. So sorry to hone in on Virginia there. It's always been a pet peeve. But yes, you know, there's a lot of other things that we can address about the FDA and making sure that this actually gets fixed. You know, especially, you know, me and my spouse, you know, we could be seen as, quote, gay or anything else. So, you know, then we would fall into the same programs because they ask for, well, what is your birth gender and all this other stuff. So that's just more ways of discrimination to happen. If I'm there to show up to give blood freely to help out our communities, I want to be able to do that without, you know, saying, hey, they know how to test the blood. If they want good blood, they'll do it behind the doors, but not telling me to walk out. So we need to be thankful for the time that we have here on this earth to help others. You're muted.
When you're muted, yeah.
Thank you.
See, I
Yeah, I have one final question, and that's kind of, how can people who are not members of the community be a friend and be a strong ally? What can people do to help support the LGBTQ community?
Why don't you start, Maya? Give it a whirl.
Well, okay. Well, speaking as a cishet woman, a white woman, definitely just amplifying those voices. I'm not trying to speak over you guys right now. Obviously, Mia gave me the floor. Sorry. But I really just try to amplify voices. I try to make every platform I'm a part of as inclusive as possible, considering all the different nuances and different people's identities. Just overall making sure you have an inclusive mindset. And if something seems unfamiliar to you, like, make sure you're willing to learn, educate yourself, ask them. Like, I know a lot of people, you don't have to go to just one person. Like, if you're asking one person to be Google, that's obviously not fair to them. But if you actually are uncomfortable or you have a question, like, you can ask them and they can explain so you can be educated. Like, I feel like it's just something that we just need to improve communication and just drop the stigma, basically.
That's true. We did have a question come in from the viewers, and that is, what sites or groups can we recommend to supporters that can help keep us up to date with real-time issues facing the LGBTQ community? Time to plug some sites, everyone.
Wow. I know that the NCTE tweeted at me today. So the Trans Equality Organization is very supportive of our campaign after the Washington Blade made it. For those in the military, you would be surprised that me, as a transgender woman who was there serving in the military with the end of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, just being freshly inked, called military one source. I thought I was going to be kicked out immediately after making that phone call, but I got the help I needed, you know, and it really helped. There's plenty of other organizations like HRC, Planned Parenthood, GLAAD, NCLR, Plan But Legal, very helpful organization. It's just amazing to see what they can do, and it really helps our community, including like places that if you needed a shelter or a place to stay, like Ruby Casa, they're able to do it. It beats sleeping on a park bench or you know, in between train stations. So trust it from me. You can always find a safe place.
Thank you, Mia. Back to our other question, Christian, I thought you were about to answer, how can people who are, you know, not members of the LGBTQ community support and uplift those who are?
Yeah, I was kind of going to piggyback off of what Maya was saying. So Maya was talking a lot about asking questions and trying to communicate. And it's also about like not being afraid to ask someone a question, not being afraid to ask someone, hey, how do you identify as, how do you sexually identify? Or what is your gender identity? Like asking those questions really make the biggest difference because when my friend I was talking about earlier was coming out at my school, there were so many people who were afraid to ask him questions and were afraid to ask him what he was thinking. And that was really what was in the back of his mind. That was like really stressing him out. It was like, oh, well, I don't know who knows about me in this way or who knows what my identity is here. And I feel like if you're just asking questions to direct people, like, what's your gender identity? What are your pronouns? Those are things that really can make a difference within the LGBT community. Asking someone, hey, do you feel comfortable talking about your sexual identity? Like just making sure that people are comfortable and just asking literally the direct questions to direct people who you want to talk to. That's what I really think it comes down to.
You're right, not being afraid to ask those questions, absolutely. Ashley, what do you think?
I think that, again, educating those around you about hot issues, topics, making sure that they, are provided some information, but yet also that they can come back to you and, ask questions. I try and, make so that my cis, non-queer friends can message me or call me or text me when they have a question. And, it always starts with, I have a question and I don't want you to get offended or it's kind of weird or something. And I'm just like, no, I want you to, because I know that they're coming to me. They're not coming at me with malice or anything. Like they really truly want to know. And so making that, clear that, hey, I'm an open book and I'm here to educate. I appreciate you being an ally for myself, for my family, for my community. So whatever I can do to give you the tools to help us, it's going to trickle down. One thing that I'm fortunate enough is I've lost count, I'll be honest with you, but quite a few, both in military and non-military parents contact me and they'll say, and again, I'm glad they're reaching out to me and say, my son thinks he's bisexual. What do I do? And so I have to have that conversation, say, well, how do you feel about that? And sometimes I haven't gotten the answer that I've always wanted. And a part of me wants to go, how can you say you're a supporter of me and my family, but yet you're not happy about your son? No, I can't. I have to, I have to get them the resources, some of the organizations that, that were mentioned and I think Christian put up and so forth, give them those tools, give them some books and so forth to read. Let's come back and let's chat about it. Or, the key says, the key thing to start with is just make sure that that you love them, and for the most part, and maybe it's just because of the friends that I attract or attract to me or whatever, is most are very, accepting, but they worry about their kids. I mean, all parents worry about your kids, but now you have a child who is not sure, like they might have been born in one body, but they just don't feel like they connect to that. And they're 8 years old. Well, guess what? That's okay. You know what? There's some resources out there for you and your child. And let's get that, let's get that going. Let's get having that conversation. So again, just, educating, having conversations, both the tough ones and the easy ones, and go from there and show appreciation. When they do say something or post something on social media, that's queer affirming, say thank you. That means a lot because they're going to keep doing it because they know that they're making a difference.
I agree, Ashley, and I think one of the best things that we can do is, look at us. We're all great leaders here tonight. Listen to us, talk to us. That's the best thing I can say because we've all lived that life story. I remember when I was doing dancing classes as a young kid and I was told, well, you can't do that. You have to do this. And I was like, why not? Why not? And I am inspired, so inspired by like what happened in Massachusetts with their Yes on 3 campaign that happened back in 2018, I believe it was, where I went up there, took the train, and there's a little 5-year-old girl whose name is Olivia. All she wanted to do was dance. We should not stop anybody, right, from pursuing their dreams and happiness here. We have the life, the liberty, and the pursuit of happiness guaranteed in our Constitution. It's time to back that up with the ERA and get it passed through the Senate and signed by our future President Joe Biden. I think anything that we've learned here tonight is something that we can share. We don't need to, like, ask our straight allies and say, look, I know you kind of did Dr. Google, but listen to me. This is how I got through it. It may not apply, but I may know some of my friends that actually have the answer that you might be looking for, because some days Gator just doesn't work. All right, but when somebody's coming out, we need to be able to make sure that they're comfortable in what they want to become and who they are, even if they're non-binary or gender fluid. We need to make sure that their identity is protected and their sexuality is protected as well. I think that's going to really help our straight allies understand the entire diversity under the rainbow of the LGBTQ+I community. I think this is really going to make a big difference, especially when they see leaders like me take the mantle and get elected. And if not, we're going to continue to fight until we are. And we have to be thankful for those who have won state legislators, city mayors like Pete, who decided to run for president. I was super excited about that. It's amazing. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Lauren, it's back to you.
Well, let's go ahead and tell everyone how we can get a hold of you guys. Ashley, can you give us, plug for your organization or let them know how they can get a hold of you?
The organization that I work with now is Modern Military Association of America. If you want to get a hold of me, as far as military, anything military related, I'm more than welcome to help you in that hat that I wear. But with the guidelines of the 501c3s, as far as my advocacy when it comes to more of a political push. I am not as tech savvy as probably the rest of you because I'm a little older, I think. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. My maiden name's Broadway, so it may be under Ashley Broadway Mac. Search for me. If not, get a hold of Lauren. You have a question. We swap emails or whatever. I'd be more than welcome to assist, and I just like to say kudos to Maya and Christian. I'm like at awe because when I was your age, I identify as bisexual, but I was not even anywhere close to where you guys are today, and I didn't come out until I was like 21, 22, and I'm just at awe with you guys, and thank you. You give me hope for our future, so thank you both.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maya, how can everyone get a hold of you?
I did put my Instagram in the chat. I can put my email there as well in just a second.
Can you read it out loud because we're streaming for some people?
Oh yeah, Maya Durkovic, MajaDurkovic. Just my first and last name is my Instagram. And if you do want to pay attention to the Eastern Tech High School Democrats, we are ETHS Dems on Instagram. So be sure to check us out there.
Awesome. Thank you. Christian?
Yeah, definitely be sure to check out our Eastern Tech Democrats. I'll say it again, ETHS Dems, that's our handle. You can reach out to me by email. My email address is cthomas12225, that's 3 2s, @gmail.com. And also my Instagram is Christian R. Thomas. So you guys can go ahead and reach me out at any of those places.
And you can reach out to me and to connect with Mia Mason's campaign at lauren@miadmason.us. And you can reach Mia at Mia4MD. That's MIA, the number 4 MD. Mia, anything else?
Yeah, if you've liked the content of this, like, share, subscribe, and of course, at the bottom of your screen, miadmason.us is a wonderful place to learn about our platform and what we stand for, because we're going to win this election based on the issues, not our sexual orientation, not our identity, but basically because you want to see the change. You want that equity, you want that equality, you want the decency to return back to politics as soon as possible, 12 days. And in order to make that happen, we are asking for a simple donation at miadmason.com/donate. It makes a huge difference when we're a grassroots organization and we come together like our coalition, No Dem Left Behind, who we basically said, hey, look, y'all are as divided as the LGBTQ community. We have to stand together and fight as a coalition. So after I taught them that, we were on board, and look, majority of us are all winning our polls and our absentee ballot numbers, which match our election day numbers from 2018. So we're all excited to win, and we can't win without you. So thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night, everybody. Goodbye.